Hello, everyone. Today is Monday, June the 9th. And forgive me, my hair is a complete and utter disaster. I am going to be getting it done today. I am also going to be getting it a more neutral color. My real color is technically a dark strawberry blonde, as I was told it was. My mother is a redhead and my father had fine, um, I want to say fine, a little bit darker hair. Um, it was hard to tell what kind of hair color he had in the older pictures, but when I knew him, his hair always looked black. Um, but anyway, I wanted to let you know there are some things I wanted to talk about with you. I'm gonna try and make this video as quick as possible because, once again, most people have the attention span of a fish in a fishbowl. I am one of them. So I decided to come back to my big old comfy couch in the back bedroom so that I can say this message to you. There are two things that I wanted to mention. Number one, I wanted to mention getting older. And number two, I wanted to mention journal writing. So let's start with getting older. Let's just put it this way. I don't have any kind of script when I talk about these things. So it kind of just comes off the top of my head as though I were talking with a friend. I want to talk to you about getting older because I noticed something. I am in between this phase of life where I am, as what my friend said, old enough to be with the dad and young enough to be with the son. Okay, that made me laugh hysterically when I found out about that, because it is very true. Based on my age range, I am 39 years old. I was born in 1986 in the beginning of the year. So I grew up in the 90s, and it was one of the best, I would say, eras to grow up in from the standpoint of we were still able to be latchkey kids. We were still able to walk home from school when we were 7 and 8 years old or whatever and be by ourselves at home. And then probably also that could be one of the reasons why I have that don't answer the door for strangers, and also why I have that occasional phone anxiety, such as don't answer calls that you don't know. And I also lived in the age before we had internet. So most of my time spent as a kid was playing with either Barbies or it was playing with Polly Pockets when I was at home. It was even watching my favorite shows, or it was listening to my favorite pop music groups at the time, which was New Kids on the Block, and then later it became the Group 5, as well as it became NSYNC. There was another one. Oh, Hanson. That was another music group that I used to like. They were a trio of boys. I'm sure there were a bunch of other little mini groups in between, because a lot of times, like groups like 98 Degrees, they would just kind of be like the K-pop factory of the 90s, where they would just pop out all these different pop groups and see which ones stuck. It was kind of like the way that K-pop is today. It's a cash cow or cash grab, whatever they want to call it. It was the same thing back then as it is today. Pretty much anybody could, anybody that has the talent and who has worked hard to get into that role, they also have to have the looks and the persona in order for them to be able to take part in that role. And they also have to be able to deal with the public, and there are many other factors involved with that. But that's another story for another time. When it comes to getting older, I notice that when we look in the mirror, the face that we see changes, but the mind that we have does not always change, and it doesn't always become a different entity. You just kind of learn to look at yourself from a different perspective, I guess you could say. Whereas for me, I'm having problems, and I've been having problems since the beginning of January, which made me want to start doing the things that I am doing now. This includes making these weird videos, even if nobody watches them. This also includes being a part of my social media group, which is for mental health awareness, and it's called The Mighty. I actually run two groups on there under the name of, I think it's VS Angel Pink 86, I think is my name on there. But I run three groups on there, and it helps me to deal with the concept of getting older. Because I'm able to talk to people about pretty much anything that pops into my mind. And you know how Facebook usually would ask you the question, hey, what's on your mind today, inside the text box? And then when you actually would share what was on your mind, your friends and family would be like, you shouldn't share that on Facebook. Well, this place allowed me to be able to express my elder millennial self and say, screw everything else, and this is what I do. And I also wanted to say, as I got older, I started resembling more with the butterfly. Okay, so the butterfly for me has been representative of change. It started happening, I want to say towards the end of December or the beginning of January. I started seeing a lot of butterflies everywhere. Now, I know that I've had a lot of butterfly items in my house, but I just didn't realize how many I had. Now, what I wound up doing is I got to a point where I said, aging is kind of like being a butterfly. You go through these different phases of development or different stages of development. So I said, what stage am I at right now? And I said, I'm in between that stage, as my best friend said, where you can do one thing and be with one type of group of people, or you can be with another type of group of people. However, I'm learning that I resonate more with people who are closer to my age, like maybe even 25 to I want to say to about 40 years old, somewhere within that age range. But a lot of times I notice that I resonate a lot well with people who are about 35, 34, 32, in their 30s. Because I feel like we grew up in the same generation. And I think that it means a lot to me that I have these friends that are in their late 20s, or even the ones that are in their mid 20s, because this way I have an idea of what their generation is like, and then I can understand what my generation is like. And at the same time, I understand what Gen X is going through because I am happen to be married to somebody who is a Gen X. He is exactly 13 years older than me. I met him in 2009, and 2007, and we got married in 2009. So I was 23 years old when I got married, and it's been a wild ride, let me tell you. I mean, we've had a lot of different things happen, and so with the process of me getting older, it's a challenge. And I'm sure that you have your own story to tell. Everything from what it is that I just said about trying to fit in with one generation to another, or even your own generation. Or you could be like me in the sense where you kind of feel like you're confused because there's a lot of people that are my age that have their own career set, and they wouldn't be wearing these types of shirts right now with poutine on them, and they wouldn't be walking around with, I don't know, a Hello Kitty lunchbox, or a Hello Kitty notebook, or a Barbie journal. They wouldn't be like that. There's a lot of girls my age that are not like that. But I noticed that when I've come across people who are in the music, people who are music lovers, particularly K-pop, I've noticed they like the kawaii culture. They also like J-pop too, which I think is pretty funny because with J-pop they use autotune to make their voices, like female artists, sound really high pitched because it's part of the kawaii culture to sound cute. So I thought it was really funny when I thought about that. And I wondered if there were people who were, in their early or even their late 30s that were still a part of that particular music culture so that I can find somebody else to relate to. It's really difficult to find people to relate to at my age. Okay, so now that I've discussed a little bit of that, I also wanted to go into another very interesting topic. And this one is the topic of journaling. Okay? I hope that that's the first topic the second topic that I mentioned at the beginning of this video, because that's the one I want to talk to you about. I have been writing journals and writing notes, stories, poetry, letters to myself, letters to other people, a ton of emails since I was about 12 years old. I started writing more intensely by the time that I reached 14 years old. Now, the reason why it started to become more intense when I was 14 is because one of the things that we had to do when I was in school in one of my English classes was to write down how I was feeling or write down an answer to a journaling prompt, and we would get judged or graded on what we wrote and made sure that we followed along with the concept of the journaling prompt. And it's interesting how I kind of became very addicted to it. Ever since then, I started buying these little Hello Kitty notebooks because they were the best looking notebooks that I could find at the time when I would go to the mall or the store. And I never really thought to look in a book section, and I didn't really go to a Barnes & Noble because I didn't even really know that a Barnes & Noble existed until a little bit later in life. So as a young teen, we'd go to the mall, and the place that I would find these books are over inside of either the Warner Brothers store that used to exist, or it would be the Hello Kitty store. And I started writing down so many different things. I wrote down the times of when I was going from class to class, the incidents and things that had happened. I even have a notebook of how many days in the month that I went with crying. Now, here's where it gets a little dark. I don't know if anybody knows this, besides a couple people that I've mentioned that might have paid attention to it when I said that I have ADD. I also have bipolar disorder, and this is bipolar disorder type 2. This means that I am more of a depressive than I am a person that becomes hypomanic. But when I am a depressive and a hypomanic at the same time, I'm constantly doing a flow like this, where sometimes you can even feel two different emotions at one time. So inside my little heavy little journals, I would start writing about these ideas of what it was that I was going through, and then I would talk about how my mood began to fluctuate. And I can kind of see the fluctuation in my words, and I can also see it in how my text was, how I was writing. My handwriting would change based on the emotion that I was feeling, and I found that out to be very strange, but very intriguing at the same time. Now, I wish that I could pull out one of my journals to kind of show you. I have like 4 or 5 bins of journals in this room that are just full of journals. They are so full to a point that I could barely keep them closed. I do recall counting them one time, and I had counted over 40. I don't remember the specific number, but that was a while ago that I made that count. I think they're probably maybe in the 50s or something now, possibly maybe even the early 60s. That's how many books that I have written. And this means, inside these books, it also contains, the situations that I was going through at the time, things that people said to me. Some of them actually include, I want to say, notes to throw people off, things that I said that I did that I actually didn't do, because I was afraid at the time that somebody in my house would have read it and thought that, that I was, doing something that I wasn't supposed to do. So therefore I would write, oh, I did this and I did this and I did this. So it was kind of opposite of what I did. I tried not to get in trouble. Um, but only I can really recall. When I look at it, I could say, yeah, that's one of those fake ones. Um, and the other thing is that I did with my books is I would write down my stories. I would write down these little short stories, and I have a shit ton of notebooks and journals that are ready to go, ready to get written in, and they're waiting for that love. I have a wide collection of pens because I write so much to a point that I'm constantly changing out my pens. Because otherwise what happens is this is the finger where I'm not giving you the middle finger, but this is the finger that I usually get the most pressure on because I'm right-handed when I write. So this is the finger that sometimes can actually hurt because I write so much. And I've tried like little different like finger cushions and stuff like that. I actually was trying to look into seeing if I could find one of those little like squishy, I don't know, those little gel pads or something, so that when I do write, it'll be easier. I tried using the ones that slide on top of the pen or the pencil, mostly pen. But the issue is with that is that when I switch pens, it doesn't always fit on the next pen. So, and then the other ones that I found, which were fabric, and I tried putting it on my finger, they were too bulky. So I couldn't really write very well with that because I tend to hold my pen really hard for some reason. I've always done that even since I was a kid. Obviously it hasn't affected me because I've been doing it for so long. But yeah, I mean, I just want to say I am a heavy journal writer, and I don't just write based on a journaling prompt. There are some books that I do have that are, what do they call that, all about me. And they talk a little bit about like what I did when I was younger and stuff like that, but I never really could finish those or write those because every time I tried to do them, I would kind of get bored of it because I'm like, I don't really want somebody else or something else giving me a prompt when I have so many other things that I could be saying. So, and one of the key factors that actually triggered me too, besides my class learning how to write these journals, was the fact that when I was younger, I'm sorry, Dad, for saying this. He's in heaven right now, but I wasn't able to speak. I wasn't really able to talk about what it was that I was going through or what it was that I was feeling because my dad would always like brush it off, or he would always tell me to stop, or like, why can't you be more like Kara, your best friend, or why can't you be more like your brother? And he was very much that kind of person that would kind of make you want to stay quiet. So a lot of times I would actually take my journal with me when I went anywhere. I would go like to a restaurant or something, and when we were out at the restaurant, I would actually put the journal out in front of me alongside of my dish, and I would write in my book. And I remember my father would yell at me a couple times, and he's like, put the diary away. And he would get so mad at me for that. But then I would look at him and say, I'm saying things in the book that I'm not allowed to say to anybody here at the table. And I think that kind of like got, offensive or like pissed him off or something. I just slapped my thigh. But it was just one of those things where I had to find a way to create an outlet, and a positive outlet that actually was going to be beneficial. But it was really hard because after a while I realized that in those books you could see from the very beginning I did not call my journals a diary. I didn't call it a diary. As a matter of fact, because my father called it a diary, I hated that word. So I would always write dear journal, or dear friend, or dear reader. And sometimes I would even make an acknowledgement to say, I bet you know exactly what's all written in the rest of this book. But right now, as I'm writing this book, the pages are all empty. And if you flip ahead, you can see the text, but I can't. And I thought that those things were really clever. There are some things that I had written were like, I wrote things like, like hot shit on a twizzle stick or something like that. And I would just make these cute, like funny or like even like, cursing, comedic statements. And in between, when I'm reading those things, it made me laugh so much. And that's why I like going back and looking at my journals, because not to try and remember some of the bad things that happened, but to laugh at some of the funny things that are written intermittently in between of all these things that took place. And I think that one day, I might actually take one of these books and literally just type the whole damn thing out and get it on paper and see if I can send that out into the world and see if somebody else wants to know. You know how some people, they like to read what somebody else is writing in their journal. They're curious. Well, maybe you might be interested in seeing what, that 20-something-year-old girl was thinking. You never know. There's a lot of trauma in those books, but there's also a lot of happy things that took place also. So getting older is really difficult. But at the same time, I consider it a blessing, because my friend who I've known since high school and I was really close with, and we were really close in high school, she passed away right after her 37th or 38th birthday. She had just turned, I think it was 37, because it feels like it was so long ago. I think it was 37. She had just turned 37 years old, and she had passed away shortly after her birthday from cancer. And ever since then, and then all the losses that I've had, I feel like every year since I was about maybe, I don't know, early 20s, every year somebody dies is what it feels like. Every year somebody that I know dies, or somebody in my family dies. I mean, my family has gotten so much smaller over the years that it's quite tragic. So, and when you age, you realize just how precious life can be. And when you have bipolar disorder and depression, it can really impact you and how you see your life. And it has gotten to a point where now, as an adult, my journals have gotten to be more about how can I fix this, or how can I improve on this, or what can I do to make my life better. And also, some of the music that I created, you'll know that some of the words that are inside of the journals, they are actually really very close to what it is that I'm feeling. One of them was the lyrics about being a shopaholic. At one point when you're feeling manic or hypomanic, you tend to get so excited that you want to go shopping, and then later on you're like, oh shit, why did I buy this? It's like, what did I need this for? I don't need this, and I'm never going to use it in my entire life. What the fuck did I buy it for? And then there were other times where I have, I'm just going to say it. God bless. I'm just going to say it. I love K-pop music. Duh. And I loved BTS very, very much, because I love their energy. And I love the fact that they were not westernized in culture. They didn't swear in their music. They were bubbly. They had bright personalities. The way that they did things was very smooth. And their talent and hard work and dedication of all of what they did helped make me feel better about myself, and for purposes, I guess you could say more youthful, whatever that's supposed to mean. But after a while, I kind of actually started getting a little bit depressed. So I wrote down in my journal saying, you know what? Hey, as I'm getting older and as I'm listening to this K-pop music, I noticed just how much depression I'm getting into, because you realize they're attracting a certain type of generation and they're abandoning an entirely different generation. So they're not my generation. They're like way over here and I am like over here, almost over here. And that's where the generation gap actually happens. So today, while I was writing in my journal, I said, let me just do something. Let me stop for a minute and let me take a look and do a little bit of research into some of my favorite music genre. So when I did, I actually found out that there is a K-pop artist from the group called Super Junior. That was the first K-pop group that I actually loved and started listening to, who I found out is actually 1 month older than me. So I got very excited. I was like, oh my God, somebody who's finally close to my age. And it was so refreshing and I felt so much more connected. And I said, it feels better knowing that the music that I heard was very, very, very much connected along the lines of my own life. And I said, I wish that some other K-pop groups out there, even the younger ones, could create or adapt some of their music to reflect either a past generation that's way older than them or a generation that is just one step ahead of them. Because I feel like they can expand their music population, not just towards screaming fans who do nothing but obnoxiously scream during a concert. I mean, I'm the kind of person that will clap and cheer after the person is, done singing. But when somebody's singing, I pay to see them and to see them sing and dance because that's what they do for a living and that's what they love to do. And to me, I just found it kind of rude to scream while I'm trying to listen to them sing. Because it's almost like as if I'm trying to talk over somebody who is already talking. Or if I'm screaming while they're trying to talk. I mean, I just always saw it differently than other people. I guess probably because when I went to a Backstreet Boy concert a long time ago, it kind of taught me that I couldn't freaking hear anything. I couldn't hear the Backstreet Boys singing, and plus they looked like ants on a stage, and all I saw was a big screen. And I'm like, what is the point? I didn't come to a concert to see these tiny figures dancing on a stage and see them on a big screen. I was like, the lack of intimacy, if that's the word, doesn't exist. So I was writing about that in my book. And I was also writing about how, when you get older, things change. And that's what actually triggered me to want to make this video. Because I feel like that those two things are tied together so much. Learning to appreciate life, learning to look for something that you can relate to in your own generation. Because I realized that based on the history of K-pop on the Netflix documentary, the reason why that they chose the people that they chose as far as a young generation is because they were trying to attract people who can relate to someone in that age bracket. And I was like, how freaking clever. And that was the guy that was the, I think he was the owner or the director of the SM Entertainment Group. He also was the one that helped push and inspire for K-pop groups to exist. But I think there's a major problem with the music industry, and it's the same thing with the United States. Auto-tune is really, really a big factor, and I also feel like it takes away from a lot of their vocal talent that they already have. I would rather hear their real voices than hear some other kind of sound twisting and turning them, like, what's his name, Little John from America. It's like every song that he sings has some kind of auto-tune crap to it, and I just feel like it takes away from the magic of who they are as a person. And it makes me wonder, do these people really have talent, or are they just a face? And do they really write their own music? Or do they have like 20 people writing their music for them? And then try to say, okay, well, can Britney Spears sing this, or can Ariana Grande sing this? Which one can we put this one with? And I'm like, that's kind of cold. Because, you know, that is cold. But anyway, the music industry is a totally different topic from getting older and aging. So I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to stop and breathe and say I'm going to continue writing my journals no matter how old I get. And I'm also going to continue to listen to a wide variety of music and enjoy myself. I am going to continue to try to find more people who I can relate to. No offense to the people who are my age that have children. I don't have kids. My kids are my fur babies. And it's hard for me to find people who, I don't know, love Hello Kitty and squishy things the way that I do. And I hope and I pray that I'll be able to find more people that can remember and love Powerpuff Girls, and who can remember and love to just be awesome. I mean, sometimes once in a while you have to make yourself smile, even if that means taking care of your own little things. Like, for example, before I let you go, I fell in love with Cinnamoroll before everybody else did on TikTok. I've loved Cinnamoroll since the first time I ever saw the character, which was many, 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 many years ago. And all of a sudden, everybody just likes Cinnamoroll, and I'm like, why? What's the deal? You know, I don't understand. And it was the same thing with me with Kuromi. Kuromi and Keroppi were always my favorite characters. But anyway, I've said way too much. I didn't want to make this video to be too long, but anyway, at least I got everything out that I needed to say for today. If you did stay, I applaud you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. Continue to listen to my song lyrics, even though I'm not the one that's verbally singing them. I am very happy to write those lyrics and put them together and composite them together, and just kind of show you what it is that matters most to me. And Nexus and dreams and reality is a real thing for me. I have thought about that for a long time. I created that in the beginning of this year, and I originally created it for my K-pop story, but my K-pop story has taken another path, and I'm at a standstill with it at the moment because I had to redo it, which I mentioned in another video, because I wanted to make it more realistic, and I didn't want to get sued. So I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea because of the stories that I have written. So, but anyway, I hope that you're doing okay. I hope that you're having a great day. I'm so sorry about my wild hair. Not that anybody really gives a shit. But yeah, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being a part of my team, and thank you for being here. And always remember that I am a pink rose in a garden of yellow ones, and I am also your butterfly girl for life. So you take care of yourself and each other, as Jerry Springer would say. And another thing that I say, don't slap anybody. You know, don't do anything that I wouldn't do. So take care of yourself. Thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, whether you're 1 or 2 people, thank you. Thank you. You have no idea how much that means to me, even if you're just 1 person. That means the world to me. I love you, and I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you in the next video, and I promise it will not be this long. See you later, alligator. Bye.